Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. Today we're going to peel back the layers of a 500-year-old urban legend. Now, I want you to think back to your childhood for a second. Picture a slumber party, a group of kids daring each other, and a really dark bathroom. It's this spooky, universally recognized ritual that has literally thrilled and terrified generations of kids. But, it makes you wonder, where did it actually come from? Is there a real monster lurking in the dark, or is there a much more fascinating truth waiting in the light? Well, today we are unpacking the whole shebang, the myth, the historical trauma, and the actual literal grain science behind one of the world's absolute most famous ghost stories.
Aw, man, just hearing that chant kind of brings it all rushing back, doesn't it? Imagine it. You step into a dimly lit room. The door clicks shut behind you. You're staring into the glass. Your heart is just pounding in your chest, totally fueled by the adrenaline rush of a childhood dare. You whisper those words, honestly half expecting a terrifying apparition to just burst through the glass and grab you. It's this massive rite of passage, right? One that we've seen in countless horror movies and whispered about in school hallways for decades.
So, what are the exact rules of this game? Formally, this is known as katoptromancy, or mirror divination, and the steps actually vary wildly depending on who you talk to. Back in the day, historically speaking, young women would walk up a flight of stairs backward. They'd hold a candle and a hand mirror, basically hoping to catch a glimpse of their future husband. Or, much spookier, the Grim Reaper, if they were destined to die unmarried. Fast forward to the 1960s, and this had evolved into the modern bathroom ritual we all know. You chant her name maybe 3 times, sometimes 13, or even up to 47 times. Some variations even tell you to spin around or turn on a tap. Actually, folklorist Alan Dundas proposed a super fascinating theory about this modern version. He suggested that the ritual, which heavily features themes of blood and usually happens in bathrooms among young girls, is basically a collective reflection of prepubescent anxiety. Pretty interesting, right? Okay, let's dive into this. Because as fascinating as the psychological theories about slumber parties are, they don't exactly answer our core historical mystery here. If Bloody Mary is a ghost, well, whose ghost is she? Every great urban legend has a seed of truth, a real person or a real event that caught the cultural imagination before spiraling completely into myth. So to find the real Bloody Mary, we've got to look past those bathroom mirrors and open up the history books. When folklorists trace the origins of this legend, they usually round up a lineup of 3 main historical suspects. First up, there's Mary Worth. She's a legendary figure, sometimes described as an American witch burned at the stake, or a murderer who operated on the reverse Underground Railroad. Then there's Elizabeth Bathory. She was an infamous 16th century Hungarian noblewoman, accused of torturing and literally bathing in the blood of up to 650 young women just to maintain her youth. But the most prominent, the most debated, and honestly the most famous candidate by far is an English monarch who earned that chilling nickname during her actual lifetime. Let's zoom in on her. The tragedy of Mary Tudor, the making of England's first queen regnant. History often remembers Mary I as just a one-dimensional monster, but her path to the throne was actually forged in immense trauma. Let's trace her timeline for a second. Born in 1516 to King Henry VIII and Catherine of Aragon, Mary was this beloved princess, until her father's desperate, all-consuming desire for a male heir totally upended her life. Henry famously broke with the Catholic Church just to divorce her mother. Almost overnight, Mary was declared an illegitimate outcast, stripped of her royal title, and permanently separated from her mom. Later, when her devoutly Protestant half-brother Edward took the throne, Mary staunchly defended her Catholic faith, even in the face of intense persecution. And when Edward died, he tried to bypass her for the Protestant Lady Jane Grey. But Mary didn't flee. Actually, she boldly rallied an army, marched right on London, and seized her rightful crown from the 9-day queen while the public wildly rejoiced. Once she was queen, Mary had one primary, overriding mission: to totally reverse the Protestant reforms of her father and brother and restore England's soul to the Catholic Church. To secure this, she married Prince Philip II of Spain. Now, this was a highly unpopular move that really alienated her subjects, who were terrified of Spanish influence. She was also desperate for a Catholic heir. But tragically, she suffered through these highly publicized phantom pregnancies, which was likely a medical condition known as a molar pregnancy that left her humiliated and childless. This intense personal trauma, combined with her super fervent religious mission, really set the stage for the actions that would end up defining her legacy forever. So the crucial point here is the number 280. To strictly enforce her religious reversal, Mary revives the old heresy laws. Under her direct orders, approximately 280 Protestant dissenters who refused to recant their faith were executed. And the method of execution was just horrifying. They were burned alive at the stake. Now, these burnings were meant to be a short, sharp shock. The idea was to force Protestants back to Catholicism, supposedly giving heretics a taste of hellfire to save their souls. But instead, it really just showcased the incredible tenacity of the Protestant martyrs and permanently cemented Mary's terrifying nickname in the history books. Now, hearing about 280 people burned at the stake is undeniably horrific to our modern sensibilities. It's an absolutely indefensible act of brutality, for sure. But it begs a really important historical question. Was Mary uniquely evil? Was her brutality a sign of raging madness, or was it simply the standard operating procedure of a deeply, deeply violent 16th century era? To truly understand this, we need to take a step back and look at the broader context of her family tree.
And this brilliantly illustrates the reality of Tudor justice. Let's look at these numbers impartially. Mary's father, Henry VIII, executed tens of thousands of his subjects. We are talking estimates up to 72,000 people. And he used methods like beheading and even boiling people alive. Her widely celebrated sister, Elizabeth I, executed hundreds of Catholics, often having them hanged, drawn, and quartered. So, in the context of early modern Europe, religious persecution and brutal executions were unfortunately the norm, not the exception. Yet her family members aren't dubbed Bloody Henry or Bloody Bess. Mary was actually acting well within the violent norms of her family line.
So why did the Bloody Mary labels stick to her so fiercely while the others kind of got a pass? The answer is incredibly effective propaganda. After Mary's death, England firmly established a Protestant national identity. Writers like John Foxe published these wildly popular accounts, notably the Book of Martyrs, complete with incredibly graphic illustrations of the burnings. They literally weaponized her actions to shape a lasting national narrative. Mary was completely transformed from a complex, traumatized, politically pioneering queen into this cartoonish, flesh-eating tyrant who, as the 16th century writer Bartholomew Trajan put it, swam in holy blood. Her legacy was permanently rewritten. Section 3. The Science of the Scare. Why the mirror trick actually works. So, if Bloody Mary is mostly historical propaganda, why does the legend still survive today? Well, cognitive anthropologists point to something called the minimally counterintuitive bias. Basically, our brains are hardwired to easily remember and pass on stories that perfectly balance the mundane with the bizarre. Think about it. If a story is too normal, it's boring. If it's too weird, it's hard to follow. But an everyday, totally familiar setting, like your own household bathroom, interrupted by just one shocking, counterintuitive concept, like a blood-soaked ghost in the mirror, is the absolute perfect psychological recipe for a viral folklore legend. It sticks in our minds because it turns something totally safe and familiar into a threat. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the Caputo effect. This explains why you actually see things in the dark. Discovered in 2010 by psychologist Giovanni Caputo, it's a very real perceptual illusion. When you stare into a mirror in a dimly lit room for a long time, your brain's face recognition system actually gets exhausted and starts to misfire. It literally struggles to piece together your features in the low light, so what does it do? It starts filling in the gaps with terrifying hallucinations, archetypal faces, monsters, or distorted versions of yourself. So the dim lighting literally causes your own brain to conjure up the exact monsters you are afraid of seeing. The ghost isn't in the mirror, it's right there in your visual cortex. So we've untangled all the threads. Bloody Mary is this brilliant, crazy tapestry woven from the genuine tragedy of a Tudor queen, centuries of highly effective political propaganda, the perfectly engineered viral folklore of childhood slumber parties, and the literal glitching of our own visual perception in the dark. It is a massive testament to the power of a good story and the incredible, sometimes terrifying, capabilities of the human brain. But knowing what you know now about the real history, the psychology, and the optical illusion, the question still remains: do you dare look in the mirror tonight?